Hi, I'm Todd Jones, host of the podcast Pressbox Access. Here's a clip from my interview with Liz Clarke. Liz recalls the emotional challenge of reporting on the death of NASCAR icon Dale Earnhardt. Liz, what was it like for you, and this is a difficult question, but on February 18th, 2001, you're covering the Daytona 500. What was it like for you personally and as a reporter to be there that tragic day when Dale died on the final lap of that race?
Yeah. So I have, apart from the death of my parents, that was the worst day of my life, by a mile. And, I've tried to talk about this to journalism classes, and it's hard. So forgive me. It's just hard every time because it feels like it was yesterday. But, and I know we weren't going to have a NASCAR hour here, but for people who don't care or know about NASCAR or didn't know Dale, the Daytona 500 it started every season, the biggest deal, the track itself, 2.5 miles around. You had to master the aerodynamic draft to race it. I mean, it was a real special, unique expertise to race like a champion at Daytona, not just like be part of the field.
Right.
And in some luck, but and on this point, no one was better than Earnhardt. I mean, he was the master of this track. He won everything at this track. I mean, oddly, the 500 was late in coming, but he ran, won shorter races, IROC races, all-star or specialty events, everything. He was the best. And 2001 Daytona 500, the final lap in the final turn, he was in a three wide. He was the middle of a 3-wide sandwich, and his car got turned hard right into the turn 4 wall, and I had covered enough death in racing and enough horrible accidents that were not fatal to know. And I had taken actually a special course in racetrack safety to get better at my job at one point. So I knew that the shorter the duration of the crash, the more dangerous it is for the driver. It's the crashes that look worse. If the car barrel rolls 12 times, that's safest for the driver because all that energy dissipates over time. If it's over like that, the entire energy is transmitted through the body.
Yeah.
And
so you knew right away that it was bad.
I knew it was incredibly serious. And then there's a protocol that follows. Anytime a driver's in a crash, you're supposed to lower your window net. So the driver's side window, there's no glass. There's just this webbing.
Right.
And you lower it to signal I'm conscious, to the people speeding to help you, like I'm conscious.
Right.
So it's like the first thumbs up. That's how you give the thumbs up. So the car stopped and the window net is not coming down.
Yeah.
And the car drifts down the banking, and I was just shaken. And then the race ends. Like seconds go by. I mean, the race ends like 2 seconds later. So the focus of the broadcast, the focus of everybody in the press box is on who wins.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't take my eye off his car, and then the broadcast. Dale Waltrip said something like, "I just hope Earnhardt is okay."
Right.
And the first driver to the car was Ken Schrader, who I mentioned earlier, and the happiest, funniest. Everybody loves Schrader. Schrader loves everybody. And he was first to the window. And when the ESPN got him immediately, or whoever was broadcasting got him, and I'd never seen such a look on his face. And he just said, all he said was, "We just have to pray." And I started crying right then. And so I called the paper, and there was someone running the paper who, it was her first weekend running the paper. It was a Sunday, and she was quite young, and Courtney, and again, it was before the internet. It's hard to explain how information flowed far differently then. And I just said, there's been a terrible crash. I'm worried about Earnhardt. It's possible he's been taken to the hospital. I said, if he dies, it is possible that you'll know before we know, because races don't like to announce a death. That
right.
In that I could picture the AP being in the hospital and getting confirmation of the death before NASCAR confirmed that he was dead. And
right.
I just said, please know, if he's dead, this is an A1 story, and you've got to call me immediately. Because the Washington Post at that time, they didn't really understand how important he was.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just started writing a basic news story. So-and-so won a crash-marred Daytona 500 race in which 7-time champion Dale Earnhardt crashed and was taken to the hospital with XXX. I was going to say serious injuries, fill in
right.
later. Just to get going. And everybody's typing along, and then my cell phone rang, and it was Courtney. And she just said, I'm sorry. And then I didn't hear anything. So it did happen like I saw it. The AP moved on the wire. Dale Earnhardt is dead, and it might have been 15 minutes before it was announced in the press box. It might have been 5. I can't remember. But the president of NASCAR came in and confirmed it later. But I had known, and I didn't make a sound because I didn't want to tell anyone. But I couldn't speak. I just started crying and had to type. And then she called back and said, they want you to write an A1 story, an appreciation of him, and then something else. I had to do 2 stories, and it just, anyway, it was unfathomable, but it was unfathomable because it was him, it was his track, he was just the best, and plus he was invincible. He was the intimidator, the badass. Like nothing
right.
bad could ever happen to Dale. And I covered some bad things that happened to Dale. I remember him racing with a broken sternum at Indy once. And then I'll stop here. But I mean, what followed was days of mourning and investigation, and the seatbelt was broken, and
right.
what some serious news, safety questions. The funeral followed. It was a long time.
It became a whole other range
and
of
the
stories.
outpouring of grief. I mean, it was.
Liz, can I ask you something real fast?
Sorry. Yes, I'll stop.
Liz, how did you write that night?
You mean?
How were you able to write, being as upset as you were?
Oh, that's easier to answer. I mean, I just thought of it. I think somebody had put this advice in my head years earlier. I don't know why, how, or what the occasion was, but I just thought, take the emotion out, or and not take it out, just set it aside. And I thought of the story like building blocks, like child's building blocks. And I'm just like, make one paragraph, make a second paragraph. Each paragraph was a building block, and so I wrote the news story first, which is like follows a sequence. And then here's who Dale was. I'm writing for a general audience here, and then my phone kind of starts blowing up, like my dad called, who would never call on assignment, but, and a boyfriend at the time called because they knew how much I love Dale. And I'm just, can't talk. And I stopped answering. I just thought of it as clearly, in a logical order as possible, get through the news story. And I did that, and then I had to write the appreciation, which was like kind of a more personal thing. And it happened that really like 9 months prior, I had spent time with Earnhardt at his farm, and we got in his truck again, he was the best place to interview him when he was driving, and but we were just like putting around his farm. He wanted to show me the pond where he fished, and he had a chicken farm, like the chicken coops, like we were. Anyway,
right. He was proud to show you all this.
Totally proud, right. And totally relaxed when he was driving. And it was his turf. I mean, literally his turf. And I would just run the tape recorder and we'd talk. And we talked about his retirement. And so he was 49 then. And he was saying, he was worrying about it already. He's like, am I going to know when it's time to retire? He's like, I don't want to hang on till I'm pathetic. I don't want to hang on too long. He's like, I've watched Michael Jordan, how he retired, and anyway, he was speaking so thoughtfully about knowing that his end was coming, at least in this iteration, and he was starting to become a car owner. And I had the whole transcript of that day in my laptop. And so when I was thinking, okay, how do I make this appreciation? I'm like, go read your transcript. I mean, I'm talking like take 5 minutes and read this transcript. And it was so poetic the way he was speaking about it. And then things that I knew about him just came to me. And that was more cathartic in a way. And I'm the queen of missing deadlines, but I didn't miss either deadline. I mean, these were the most important stories for me.
And like you said early in our conversation, like you owed it to the athlete and the audience to do a good job, right? Even in that that very emotional moment, you had a job to do. Yeah. The next day, I think you took a walk across the grounds of Daytona Speedway, right?
With Chuck Culpepper. Then I spent the next day, because NASCAR was going to have a press conference, I believe. I hope my sequence is right. I mean, I didn't leave. Explaining, was the seatbelt broken? Was it cut? Was it frayed?
Right.
This, that, and the other. I remember asking who was the manufacturer of the seatbelt. There were only like 2 possibilities. And then being treated like a effing pariah to ask an obvious news question. But anyway, it was an obvious question, a small matter. But, I started out walking because I just cannot describe the outpouring of grief that had to be captured, and I felt myself, and as a reporter, that was my job. So there was a memorial already, flowers, teddy bears, tributes, signs, outside turn 4 where the crash had been, outside the track. I think now there's a statue of Dale, I believe, there. And I came across the wonderful Chuck Culpepper, who's now...
Right, our mutual friend, the great Chuck Culpepper.
Knew him a bit. And I think he was working for the Louisville paper then? I can't
Lexington,
remember.
I believe.
Lexington, sorry. And we just were like travelers in this day of tears. And I remember Mike Vega being there too from the Boston
Globe, right?
And nobody had words. And it was a long series of days of press conferences and questions, and then a funeral service in Charlotte, and then the next weekend's race was at Rockingham, North Carolina, and that was a hard thing to cover. It was a hard thing for everybody. I don't mean to make it sound like I had the hard time. I mean, my God, his son raced the next weekend, and everybody in the garage, there was the level of disbelief. It just took forever for it to sink in. He was gone.